Community. I've lived in Santa Barbara for 32 years now, I think. And, oh, I'm sorry, that's short. 37 years. I originally lived in New Mexico, was born in New Mexico. My mother also was from New Mexico. So I have really strong roots there. But I've lived in Santa Barbara for such a long time, and I've been involved with poetry and music for the whole time I've been there, pretty much. So when I started writing, and I was brave enough to go out and think I'd like to read my poems for someone, Phil Taggart was hosting an open reading at the Green Dragon, which is no longer, but the Green Dragon Coffee House in Santa Barbara. And so that was one of the first readings that I read at. We also had some other wonderful people, and thank you, Phil. We had some other wonderful people doing open readings back then, where you could go and if you were a new poet in the community, you could go and read your poem and make some friends and hear some other poetry. Well, that's kind of fallen by the wayside in Santa Barbara. The bookstore's closed, and we don't have a lot of free venues where we can go. People got tired of espresso machines, so the coffee houses are sort of out of favor now. But what I've heard for years as a member of the community, a very active member of the community, was that there are no readings anymore. There's no place to read. So I was noticing how a lot of poets who were not as accomplished or successful at getting published and so forth were kind of becoming marginalized. I heard for years, there's no place to read in Santa Barbara. Can you get me a reading? Well, no, I can't. There aren't any readings. So what I'm trying to do as laureate is pull back in and be inclusive. We're having more variety in the types of readings we offer. More open readings are popping up. And I personally am producing readings, but I'm also co-producing readings, grabbing other poets and saying, come on, you can do this with me. So I'm sort of mentoring other poets so that they learn how to put on a reading. Because something I say to poets who go, there are no readings, well, make one. Make a reading. You can do this. All you need is a sound system, a spot to be, you get your emails out there, and voila, you've got a reading. So I'm trying to take the mystery out of it by grabbing people and making them do it with me. With varying success, but it's really been pretty fun, and people feel more involved and more a part of it, and they have purchase on this community, on what we're doing. So I think we're just trying to shoot some vitality into our community up in Santa Barbara, which was a great community. There were already people putting on readings, just not enough. Not enough. So there's more now. And now we have people going, well, there's too many readings. There are too many readings, and I can't go to all these readings. So I'm like, well, you might have to make some choices, It's okay. It's okay if you don't go to all the readings. So I think that's mainly what I want to say about what's happening in Santa Barbara right now. And we're enjoying the community. There's a lot of joy and new energy, and people do feel more involved, so that's wonderful. I brought some poems to read. I'm going to read you the poem I read at my installation as Poet Laureate. And I was writing a poem to read that was about the earthquake, the Santa Barbara earthquake of 1925, and how the City Hall, which is where the installation of the Poet Laureate took place, City Hall stood fast. It was only a year old of new construction when the earthquake of 1925 hit. And I thought that was really interesting. It would be cool. But it was actually kind of dry and boring when I got down to it. So I decided to write a poem about an ars poetica, about how art wounds and heals us and saves us, and kind of the journey, how I got here. This is called Call Me Poet. Greetings and greetings. My wings are weary of beating the long flight to this ledge with a view, to be here with you, to be named. Call me poet, if it's all the same. It is the only title one needs, titles being somehow the antithesis of what it is we do, of a calling so base. It's true I did not arrive at this lofty place by flying, but by falling. And it was a fall from grace. Came down with meteor force to make my crater, meet my creator. Make no mistake, it was a kind of death or a gift I could not have asked for or described. It freed me as a pariah is free. And I packed my scraps into a wagon and was gone, a fresh vagabond. I traveled wild, unbroken paths to towns where poets would have me at their tables. We ate, we swapped fables and lies. These did not care my heart was broken or blackened, but examined tattoo and scar and nodded wisely over my story, unhorrified. I did not start a new life then, but as one who has lost all and takes a vow at the edge of waking, I went up to the podium when called, empty as I was and breaking, still breaking, never to be whole. And that little wood became my home, my circle of safety, my spot where no harm could touch me, where I could say the beautiful, the holy, the hideous truths. As I traveled, I was often called to witness as a second-generation holy talking prophet, not just a reciter of the written word, but a conduit for the voices of barking fox, waterfall, neon, lonely railway, fence post, eucalyptus, and the songs of prairie grasses in the night. And to say something of light, its glory touching us like memory long after. And inasmuch as I was faithful to these songs, such was the measure of my joy. Oh, call me poet, for no other name will stick to me, I swear. And the garland even now is falling from my hair, just as night must fall, and dust, and these words must, and all things beautiful. Thank you. So I wrote another poem, very irreverent poem, which was also an Ars Poetica, much lighter and sort of a rant, actually. I grew up in Roswell, New Mexico, so by way of introduction, I think that's all I have to say. And I'm going to read you this one and a few more. Child of repression. When my third grade teacher, Mrs. Moody, tacked my poem to the bulletin board and tapped it with her magic extendable pointer, my mother, an English major, gave me a rare smile of approval. Mrs. Moody kept that poem and read it to successive third grade classes until I grew up and left town, a period of 10 years. But long before I was born, a silver spacecraft crashed outside my town and everybody knew about it. Generals and goons arrived in record time to threaten our neighbors and kin. Hey, mouths snapped shut so hard, it caused a spell of repression to fall over the plains and the grass dried up. Even though I was not told what it was that no one was ever supposed to talk about, I got the message in the water. And it set me to wondering about things that fester or become beautiful while hidden beneath the surface, like our underground lakes and oil and copper. And my love became one of those hidden things, for I was a child of repression in a Bible Belt town where alfalfa, corn, cotton, and pecans grew aplenty as DDT seeped into our food, our air, our water, making us sick, and nobody complained about the crop dusters strafing our fields. There was nothing to do, no way to distinguish oneself outside of church or school, and a girl could just die of boredom picking pecans off the ground in a town with an abundance of nuts and repression and repressed nuts. I floated and sleepwalked looking for messages on walls, on dirt, in the sky, found hope written in twigs and stones, found the perfect Pecos Valley diamond on the ground. And because the Klan lived peacefully in our neck of the desert, where no one talked back or raised objection, and there was little call for burning crosses, the usual and unusual religions were allowed to flourish. Well, my grandpa, a good preacher but a hard father, raised his son, my father, in ambivalence despite and because of his bold example. But I always thought, wouldn't it be fun to speak up there and pound a pulpit? You do call this a pulpit, don't you? Well, I got a lot of things saved up to say because I am a child of repression and bold example. I say, let words come, let them flow like a wild river, like a flash flood in the desert. Ars poetica, benedictus. That's kind of a mouthful. So it's true, my grandpa was a preacher, and he preached in several towns and retired, and then he was restless. He missed it, you know. He really enjoyed his work. So my father helped him start a little church in Roswell, and this is a little story from that church. This is the title poem from my book, When the Big Wind Comes, and that line is a line in the poem. The poem is called Jonah. Future poet. No hills crease the light or stop the wind. The world is flat, and mystics are history. We see one blue peak on the long horizon, unevocative as an elbow. Matter-of-factly and all afeared, we do as we are told. While over our heads, war jets test the speed of sound. They leave pink messages in our huge blank sky, not from God, but close. Saturday in Jimmy's yard, I am the wizard. I throw down the word, and comes the first boom right on the word, and I am ordained in Jimmy's sight. My grandpa's a preacher. His church is a schoolroom. His 20 sheep huddled together. When the big wind comes in April, we all know there is nothing on this flat earth to stop it. Barn roofs and sheep will be taken while we sing a plain anthem at the edge of town. Sunday, I light the candles with a flimsy paper match. Roses in a coffee can smell sweet on the altar. The overhead lights flicker, and when the storm hits the little school, the morning goes brown as a shut closet. Our song is thin within these howling windows. The smallest children begin to wail as heavy objects hit the outside walls. Then Grandpa takes the room in hand. With a loud prayer and scripture from the heavy book, he gives us the tale of Jonah. And far, so very far from water, we crouch in the belly of a whale. Thank you. I'm going to read 2 more poems. Is that about right, time-wise? In December, I was packing to evacuate. I could see Thomas fire coming over the ridge from my window. So I had this big pile of stuff in the middle of the floor, family heirlooms, and you're surprised at how little you really want to take with you when the time comes. But I stood before my bookcase and wept. I knew I couldn't take them, my babies, And not surprisingly, the ones I chose to pack were the ones by people I know. The volumes by the poets I know. Many out of print now, little books. Anyway, I want to read you, this is a dream I had. And it's not about a fire, it's about a different kind of disaster. And there are 2 characters, the prophet and the scribe. I'll let you guess which one I was. Of course, in your dream, you're all the characters, right? So, on the morning church and state are slated to wed, the earth begins to shake, and the books, first to defy order, jump from the walls. Sacred scroll and government edict slip into each other's arms with ease. Amid a desecration of falling statuary, the scribe crouches atop the stacks, eyes and ears covered in marble dust, scratching with her chalk. The prophet wears a hat of candles. A mess of wax hardens on his shoulders like bird shit. He circles the rubble and shouts, a disaster of secrets coming fast. They thought I had something to tell them. I refused to make things up. They beat me. They drowned me. Take down this crux, I told them. There's a hole in the wall behind it. We can tear down this room of lies. Plaster falls in rafts. The scribe flees with her tablet and all the books she can carry as the prophet raves on. But the books she tries to save keep dropping from her pockets, slipping out the torn hem of her coat as she runs. She curses the first book and leaves it lying in the road. The second falls in a running ditch. Old poets vanish like trick ink. The third burns at a toss of her hand as the fire leaps up to catch it. The audacity to burn such knowledge. More audacious yet to choose one book because she loves it and she can save only one. A little close to home. So this poem was requested. This is the poem that Phil included in the lovely notice he sent out for this event. And I have been growing my hair just because it grows. So it's gotten quite long, and I've cut it. This year I've probably cut 5 inches off of it. It just keeps growing, and it never did that for many, many years. It would only get this long. So I don't know why, but a friend of mine said, why don't you cut your hair? And why don't you dye your hair? I got this in 1 week. I got 3 comments like that. And I started thinking about it. Why don't I cut my hair? There must be a reason. So I wrote this poem in response, why I did not cut my hair. Because each follicle is a tiny antenna, and the longer the antennae, the more intelligence I can collect. Because I kept my hair all the way through cancer. Because I kept my hair all the way through menopause, though I shed like a dog who was left in the car. Because hair wants to do its own thing. Because the arbiters of fashion say to cut it short after 40, and the gravitational pull of planets at the moment of my birth caused a lifelong tendency to act contrary to expectation. Because the abuelitas in my neighborhood sport braids down to their waists that swing when they walk. Because Frida cut hers despite an unfaithful man, and I, who have no unfaithful man, am grateful. Because those Native American boys recruited to scout during wars lost their uncanny abilities after they were given the buzz cut. Because my husband used to tousle my short curls, and now he watches my hair with a sort of shyness. Because long hair flies in wind and floats like seaweed. Because it catches the eastern light to make a kind of halo. Because hair is a holy garment. Thank you.